Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today we're tackling a video all about how to improve your English.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
It's got 15 tips in total, so a lot to get through, but
Okay.
we'll try to pick out the best bits.
Sounds good.
So where do we start?
Well, the first part is about immersion, but
Okay.
it goes a little bit deeper than you might expect.
Like what kind of things?
So, one thing they suggest is changing your phone settings to English
Oh, okay.
and your apps too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I never really thought about doing that.
Yeah, it's just about surrounding yourself with English as much as possible.
Yeah.
Even in those little ways.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then they talk about choosing English entertainment.
Like what?
So watching movies, TV shows, even listening to podcasts in English.
Right. Makes sense.
But the key is to make it stuff that you enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, so you actually want to do it. You're not forcing yourself.
Exactly. You're more likely to stick with it if you're enjoying it.
Right. So, okay, that's all about kind of like absorbing English passively.
Yeah.
But at some point, you've got to actually start speaking.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So they have a great tip for this, and that is talking to yourself in English.
What?
Yeah.
Really? Out loud?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It might feel a little bit strange at first,
Yeah.
but it's a really good way to kind of get your brain used to thinking in English.
Okay.
And they even suggest doing it in front of a mirror.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. That's getting a little intense now.
I know. It does sound a bit strange, but it's all about building confidence.
Right. Okay. All right. I'll try it.
Yeah.
So we've got immersion. We've got speaking practice. What's next?
So next they talk about reading.
Okay.
And it's similar to the entertainment point. They say it's really important to choose things that you're interested in.
So like if I really like comics, I should be reading comics in English.
Exactly, yeah. So it could be novels or blogs or, yeah, like you said, comics.
Right.
Anything that you find interesting.
Okay.
And they say if you're a beginner, a good place to start is with children's books or simplified readers.
Right, because the language is a little bit easier.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. But you're still getting that exposure to grammar and vocabulary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's important to make it an active process as well.
Okay, how do you mean?
So don't just passively read.
Yeah.
Highlight words that you don't know. Look them up. Try and use them in your own writing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we've got reading. What's next?
The next thing they talk about is active listening.
Okay.
And this is about really paying attention to how English is spoken.
Okay.
So they use the phrase, "How are you?" as an example.
Yeah.
And they point out how the intonation rises at the end,
Oh, yeah, you're right. It does.
which makes it sound more conversational.
Right. So it's not just the words, it's how you say them.
Exactly, yeah. And they recommend listening to things like podcasts, specifically ones designed for English learners.
Okay, like what? Any recommendations?
Yeah, they mention one called The English We Speak.
Okay, I'll take it out.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay.
So after active listening, they move on to talk about flashcards.
Flashcards. Really? Oh my gosh, I haven't used flashcards since I was a kid.
I know, right? But they can be really effective for learning vocabulary.
Okay.
And they have a good tip for using them.
Oh yeah. What's that?
Review your flashcards just before you go to sleep.
Before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, why?
So apparently our brains are more receptive to new information when we're sleeping.
Oh wow. Really?
Yeah, so it's like the perfect time to learn new words.
Okay, all right. I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
So we've got immersion, we've got speaking practice, reading, listening, vocabulary. What else? What's next?
So next they recommend journaling.
Journaling in English.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is about practicing your writing skills, but
Yeah.
also expressing yourself.
Okay. And they say it's really important not to worry too much about making mistakes.
Oh, that's good because I make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. Well, we all do. It's part of the learning process.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to use things like grammar checkers.
Okay, yeah, good point.
Yeah, they can be really helpful.
All right. So journaling, what's next?
So after journaling, they talk about joining online English communities.
Oh, okay. So like Facebook groups or
Yeah, exactly.
it.
So Facebook groups, Reddit forums, things like that.
Right.
And it's a good way to connect with other English learners.
Okay.
Share tips, get support, and practice your speaking skills.
Yeah, that's a good idea because it can feel a little bit lonely sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's good to have that sense of community.
Right. So we're kind of building this whole ecosystem for learning English.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. What's next?
Next, they talk about watching things with subtitles.
Oh, okay. So like movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they recommend starting with English subtitles
Right. So you can see the words as you're hearing them.
Yeah.
And then as you get more comfortable, you can switch to no subtitles.
Okay, so it's like a stepping stone.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, cool.
And they even suggest some specific shows that are good for this.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
So they recommend Friends and The Office.
Oh, yeah. Those were classics.
Yeah, and they use everyday language, so...
Yeah, it's not too complicated.
Exactly.
Fun.
So after subtitles, they talk about a technique called shadowing.
Shadowing. What's that?
So it's basically listening to a native speaker
Yeah.
and then trying to repeat exactly what they say.
Oh, okay. So like copying them.
Yeah, exactly. So you're
Yeah.
copying their pronunciation, their intonation, everything.
Okay.
It's a really good way to improve your own pronunciation.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow, we're flying through these tips. What's next?
Next, they talk about learning idioms and phrases.
Oh, okay. Like those expressions that don't really make sense literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So things like hit the books or
Yeah.
piece of cake.
All right, right. Okay.
And they say it's important to learn these because they can make your English sound more natural.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and they also help you to understand cultural nuances.
Right, okay.
So then they talk about the importance of making learning fun.
Okay.
Yeah. So they suggest things like playing language games,
Oh.
like Scrabble or crosswords,
Mhm.
or even using language learning apps like Duolingo.
Right, okay.
So yeah, anything that makes the process more enjoyable.
Okay, good tip.
Yeah, because if you're enjoying it, you're more likely to stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's next?
So this is a really important one, and it's about embracing mistakes.
Oh, okay, good. I need to hear this one.
Yeah, so they say that it's okay to make mistakes. It's part of the learning process.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's essential for growth.
So, we shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they even say you should laugh at your mistakes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's all about having a positive attitude.
Okay.
And then the final tip in this section is about speaking with native speakers.
Okay. That sounds terrifying, but also important.
Yeah, I know. It can be a bit daunting, but
Yeah.
they recommend using language exchange apps.
Oh, okay. Like what?
So apps like Tandem or HelloTalk.
Okay.
And these apps connect you with native speakers who want to learn your language.
Right. So it's like a swap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's a great way to get real-world speaking practice.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's it for the first part of the video.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
but I feel like I've already learned so much.
Me too.
All right. Well, stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll continue exploring these amazing tips.
See you then.
Bye.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into all those awesome English learning tips.
I'm ready for more.
Okay, so last time we were talking about how to really immerse yourself in English, right?
Yeah. We talked about stuff like changing your phone settings.
Exactly.
Not like watching movies.
Exactly.
Yeah, kind of thing. So, one thing I wanted to pick up on was this idea of changing your phone settings.
Yeah.
It's such a simple thing, but it can make a big difference.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. How does that actually help?
Well, it's all about exposure, right?
Okay.
So even if you're not actively studying, you're still seeing English all the time
Okay.
on your phone.
Right.
And your brain is kind of picking it up in the background.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah,
So it's like passive learning.
exactly.
Okay.
And the same goes for the entertainment thing.
Yeah.
If you can make English a part of your daily life in a way that you enjoy,
Yeah.
then you're much more likely to, make progress.
Yeah, without even realizing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we've got immersion. We also talked about actually speaking English.
Right.
And I think we both agreed that talking to yourself was a little bit out there.
I know.
But it
Yeah.
could be useful.
It's worth a try, right?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a go.
Okay, good.
So what else did they recommend for actually speaking?
So one thing they emphasized was the importance of body language.
Okay.
And they said that even practicing in front of a mirror can
Yeah.
be really helpful
Okay,
because you can see how you look when you're speaking
Right.
and you can make adjustments.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it's all about building confidence.
Okay.
So the more comfortable you feel with how you look,
Yeah.
the more confident you'll be when you're speaking.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So we've got immersion, we've got speaking. What about reading?
Okay, so for reading, they had a few interesting tips.
Okay.
One thing they mentioned was starting with children's book.
If you're a beginner.
Right.
Because the language is simpler,
Yeah.
but it's still good practice.
Okay.
And they also said it's important to choose things that you're genuinely interested in.
Right. So it's not a chore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So whether it's novels or magazines or even comics, anything that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And then they had a really good tip for making reading more active.
Okay. How do you mean?
So they said that you should highlight words that you don't know.
Okay.
Look them up in a dictionary.
Right.
And then try and use those words in your own writing.
Okay, so it's not just about passively reading, it's about interacting with the text.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, cool. So what's next?
So after reading, they talk about active listening.
Active listening, okay.
And this is about really paying attention to how English is spoken.
Okay.
So they give an example of the phrase, "How are you?"
Yeah.
And they point out that the intonation rises at the end.
Oh, yeah, you're right, it does. Which makes it sound more conversational.
Right, okay.
And they recommend listening to podcasts.
Okay, yeah, we talked about that in the last part.
Yeah, but they specifically recommend podcasts that are designed for English learners.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So, because the language is usually a bit simpler.
Right.
And they often explain things.
Okay, cool. So what about vocabulary? How do they suggest learning new words?
So for vocabulary, they recommend using flashcards.
Flashcards.
Yeah.
Again.
No, I know.
They really like flashcards.
They're really effective.
Okay. Yeah.
And they have a really interesting tip for using flashcards.
Okay, what's that?
They say you should review your flashcards just before you go to sleep.
Before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So apparently our brains are more receptive to new information when we're sleeping.
Really? Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, so it's like the perfect time to learn new vocabulary.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try that. So we've got immersion, we've got speaking, reading, listening, vocabulary. What else? What's next?
Okay, so next up is journaling.
Journaling, okay.
And this is all about practicing your writing skills, but in a more personal way.
Okay.
So they encourage you to write about your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences.
Okay, yeah, like a diary.
Yeah, exactly. And they say it's really important not to worry too much about making mistakes.
Right, yeah, because it's just for you.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not like you're writing an essay or something.
Yeah, it's just about getting your thoughts down on paper and practicing your writing skills.
All right.
And they also say that you can use things like grammar checkers to help you.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so don't be afraid to use those tools.
Okay, cool. So what's next?
So after journaling, they talk about joining online English communities.
Oh.
So things like Facebook groups, Reddit forums, language exchange websites. And they say that this is a great way to connect with other learners.
Okay.
Share tips, get support, practice your speaking skills.
Right, yeah, we talked about that a little bit in the last part.
Yeah.
It's like finding your tribe.
Exactly, yeah. So you don't feel so alone.
Right. Okay, cool. So we're really building this like whole support system for learning English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's next?
So next, they talk about watching things with subtitles.
Okay.
And they recommend starting with English subtitles.
Right.
So you can see the words as you're hearing them.
Yeah.
And then as you get more comfortable, you can switch to no subtitles.
Okay, yeah, it's like training wheels.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. They recommend any specific shows?
Yeah, they suggest Friends and The Office.
Oh, yeah, I've heard those are good for learning English.
Yeah, because they use everyday language.
Right, okay.
And they're also just fun to watch.
Okay, cool.
So after subtitles, they talk about a technique called shadowing.
Shadowing, okay. And this is where you listen to a native speaker.
Yeah.
And you try to repeat exactly what they say.
Okay.
So you're copying their pronunciation, their intonation, everything.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's intense.
It is.
But it sounds really effective.
It is, yeah. It's a great way to improve your pronunciation.
Okay, all right. I'm going to give it a try.
Okay, good.
What's next?
So next they talk about learning idioms and phrases.
Okay, like hit the books and...
Exactly, yeah. So those expressions that don't always make sense literally.
Right.
But they're really common in everyday English.
Okay.
And they can make your English sound more natural.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and they can also help you to understand cultural nuances.
Oh, okay.
So they recommend keeping a list of idioms and phrases.
Okay.
And trying to use them in your conversation.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So, what else?
Okay, so this is a really important point, and it's about making learning fun.
Okay, good, yeah.
Because if you're not enjoying it,
Yeah.
you're not going to stick with it.
Right, exactly.
So they suggest things like playing language games,
Okay.
like Scrabble or crosswords,
Yeah.
or using language learning apps like Duolingo.
Right.
And these can be really fun ways to practice your English.
Okay, yeah, because it doesn't feel like studying.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So we're almost at the end of our list.
Yeah.
What's next?
So this is a really important one, and it's about embracing mistakes.
Okay, yeah, good.
So they say it's okay to make mistakes.
Right.
It's part of the learning process.
Okay.
And in fact, it's essential for growth.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Right.
Laugh at your mistakes.
Okay.
Learn from your mistakes.
Okay.
And just keep practicing.
Okay, good advice. So final tip then. What's the last one?
Okay, so the last tip is about speaking with native speakers.
Oh, okay.
And I know this can be a bit daunting.
Yeah, a little bit.
But they say it's really important to get real-world speaking practice.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And they recommend using language exchange apps.
Okay, like what?
So things like Tandem or HelloTalk.
Okay.
And these apps connect you with native speakers who want to learn your language.
Right, okay, yeah.
So it's like a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a great way to improve your speaking skills.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Yeah. So that's it for part 2.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground,
We have.
but I feel like I've learned so much.
Yeah.
All right, well, stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll be wrapping up all those amazing tips.
See you then.
All right, welcome back for the final part of our English learning extravaganza.
I know, right? I feel like we've been on this amazing journey.
So many tips, so many strategies. It's been great.
Yeah, it has. So are you ready to dive into the last few?
Absolutely, let's do it. What do we got left?
Okay, well, one thing they talked about was the importance of setting goals.
Oh yeah, goals, right.
But not just any goals. Small, achievable goals.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you set your goals too big,
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, I'll never get there.
Exactly. So instead of saying, I want to be fluent in English,
Right.
try setting smaller goals like, this week I'm going to learn 10 new words.
Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah.
much more manageable.
Exactly.
Okay, so small goals.
Yeah, and they also emphasize the importance of consistency.
Okay, consistency, right.
So even if you only have a few minutes each day, it's important to do something.
Okay, so like even if it's just like 5 minutes of Duolingo or something.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Or reading a short article.
Okay.
Or listening to a podcast.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's like building a habit.
Exactly.
Okay. So small goals, consistency, anything else?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Wow. That's it. We've reached the end of our 15 tips.
We have!
That went by so fast. I feel like we just started.
I know, it's amazing how much we've covered.
So I guess the question now is, what are we going to do with all this information?
Right.
We got all these tips, all these strategies.
What are you going to try?
Well, I'm definitely going to try that thing about reviewing flashcards before bed.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
That was a really interesting tip. And I also want to try that shadowing technique.
Okay, good luck with that.
It sounds really challenging,
Yeah.
but I think it could be really helpful.
Yeah, I think so too.
So what about you? What are you going to take away from this deep dive?
Well, I think for me, the biggest takeaway is just the importance of making it fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you're not enjoying it, you're not going to stick with it.
Right, and there's so many fun ways to learn English.
Yeah, exactly. So find what works for you and just go for it.
I think that's a great message to end on. So to all of our listeners out there, find what you enjoy, set some small goals, be consistent, and don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah, and remember, learning English should be a fun adventure.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We hope you learned something new, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.